Hey everyone! Today we're going to talk about a really interesting and controversial pharaoh from ancient Egypt, Akhenaten. He wasn't just any ruler, he made some huge changes that shocked his people and completely changed Egyptian history. Akhenaten was originally named Amenhotep IV. He was the son of Pharaoh Amenhotep III and Queen Tiye. At first he ruled just like his father, following Egypt's usual traditions. But in his 5th year as king, everything changed. He abandoned Egypt's old gods and started worshipping just one, Aten, the sun god. To show his dedication, he even changed his name to Akhenaten, which means successful for Aten. This was a massive change for Egypt because, for centuries, the people had worshipped many gods. The most powerful god was Amun, and the priests of Amun had become super rich and influential. In fact, they had almost as much power as the pharaoh himself. Akhenaten didn't like this, so instead of trying to share power, he went to the extreme. He banned the worship of all gods except Aten. To make sure no one ignored his new rules, he even built a new capital city called Akhenaten, now modern-day Amarna, where he and his followers could worship Aten without interference. This decision turned Egypt upside down. Temples dedicated to other gods were shut down, and their names were erased from monuments as if they had never existed. The Egyptian people, who had always worshipped many gods freely, were suddenly forced to follow just one. And to make things even stranger, this new religion revolved almost entirely around Akhenaten and his family. He claimed that only he could talk to Aten, making himself more important than ever. No other pharaoh had ever done this before. Some people today think Akhenaten was a visionary because he introduced monotheism, it means belief in one god, long before other major religions did. But for the Egyptian people at the time, his religious revolution was a disaster. Their gods had always represented balance, peace, and tradition, and suddenly, all of that was taken away. His orders to erase the old gods weren't peaceful changes, they were violent. Statues were destroyed, temples were shut down, and priests lost their power. People who still worshipped Amun had to do it in secret. But religion wasn't the only thing Akhenaten ignored. He also stopped paying attention to Egypt's foreign affairs. As pharaoh, he was supposed to protect his kingdom and keep good relationships with Egypt's allies. But he was so focused on his religious changes that he completely neglected his responsibilities. Other nations that used to be Egypt's friends begged for help, but Akhenaten ignored them. Rabadi, the king of Byblos, sent over 50 letters asking for military support, but Akhenaten never responded, and his kingdom was lost. The king of Mitanni, another ally, was also disappointed. He used to receive gifts of solid gold from Amenhotep III, but Akhenaten only sent cheap gold-plated statues instead. Egypt's enemies noticed this weakness and took full advantage. And Akhenaten was so focused on his new religious beliefs that he ignored a lot of Egypt's problems, especially when it came to dealing with other countries. But the Amarna Letters, a collection of messages from foreign rulers, show that when it suited him, he did step in. One example of this was his dealings with a man named Abdi-Ashurta. Abdi-Ashurta was a powerful leader who started taking control of areas that were supposed to be loyal to Egypt, especially in Canaan and Syria. One of the rulers who suffered because of this was Rabadi, the king of Byblos. Rabadi was a strong supporter of Egypt, and he sent desperate letters asking for help. He warned that Abdi-Ashurta was working with the Hittites, who were Egypt's enemies. But, as usual, Akhenaten mostly ignored these warnings, just like he ignored other leaders who depended on Egypt for protection. However, when Abdi-Ashurta's actions started threatening key areas that Egypt actually cared about, Akhenaten finally got involved. He had Abdi-Ashurta arrested and brought to Egypt, where he was locked up for a year. But when the Hittites started advancing further, Akhenaten let him go, probably because he decided it was better to have him as a controlled ally, rather than risk making things worse. This shows that Akhenaten wasn't completely detached from politics, but he only took action when it was convenient for him. Most of the time, he stayed focused on his religious reforms and life in Akhenaten. Many historians believe his rule was mainly inward-looking, with little concern for Egypt's traditional role as a major power in the region. While Akhenaten ignored foreign affairs, he poured all his energy into building his city, Akhenaten. He chose its location carefully, making sure it was aligned with the sun. The temples and doorways were designed to catch the first light of the morning, symbolizing devotion to Aten. The city had grand buildings, including a central palace where Akhenaten met foreign visitors and held ceremonies. His personal palace, where he lived with his wife Nefertiti and their children, was further north. Every day he and Nefertiti rode in their chariots along a special road connecting their home to the main palace, mirroring the sun's journey across the sky. The artwork from this period reflected Akhenaten's religious ideas in a completely new way. Before and after his time, Egyptian art showed pharaohs as strong, idealized figures, broad shoulders, muscular and powerful. But during Akhenaten's rule, artists created images that looked very different. He and his family were shown with long faces, thin arms, wide hips, and oddly shaped bodies. Some historians think he may have had a genetic disorder like Marfan's syndrome, which could explain these unusual features. But a more likely reason is that the art was symbolic. It may have been meant to show how Aten's divine power changed those who worshipped him. Many of these images include the sun's rays reaching down to touch Akhenaten, Nefertiti, and their children, reinforcing the idea that they were special, even godlike. One of the most unusual things about Amarna art is how personal it is. Earlier pharaohs were usually shown in battle or performing important rituals, but Akhenaten's artwork showed him in private moments, playing with his kids, sitting with Nefertiti, and sharing family time. This wasn't just about showing a more human side, it was connected to his religious beliefs. In his view, Aten was the only true god, and the royal family was the only way to connect with him. But Akhenaten's religious experiment didn't last long after his death. His successors, including his son Tutankhamun, quickly abandoned Aten worship and restored Egypt's traditional gods. Tutankhamun, originally named Tutankhaten, even changed his name to honor Amun instead of Aten. Later rulers, especially Horemheb, went even further to erase Akhenaten's legacy. They destroyed temples dedicated to Aten, removed Akhenaten's name from records, and acted as if he had never existed. For centuries, no one even knew about him until archaeologists uncovered the ruins of Amarna in the 1800s. Despite this, Akhenaten's ideas may have influenced later religious beliefs. Some scholars, including Sigmund Freud, have suggested that his vision of a single, all-powerful God may have inspired the development of monotheism, including Judaism. Whether that's true or not, Akhenaten remains one of the most unique and controversial rulers in Egypt's history. His devotion to Aten turned the kingdom upside down, and when it failed, Egypt tried to erase him. But history has a way of bringing lost stories back to life, and Akhenaten's strange and interesting rule is still studied today. Even his own son, who was born with the name Tutankhaten, changed it to Tutankhamun to show support for Amun and the old gods. Rulers after him, like and especially Horemheb, tore down his temples, reused the stones, and removed his name from monuments. For a long time, it seemed like they had succeeded. King Lis skipped over him completely, jumping from Amenhotep III straight to Horemheb. It wasn't until the ruins of Amarna were rediscovered in the 1800s, and Akhenaten's tomb was found in 1907, that people began learning his story again. As more of his city, art, and writings were uncovered, the world started debating who he really was and how much his bold ideas changed history.